Hey Abhay, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing, Savanya?
All good. Thank you everyone for joining us for this live Q&A here on Scholarship Track. I'm Sivani Naidu. I'm a content writer. Today we have Abhay Rangan in the house. Rangan, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So he is the founder of Good Milk India. Good Milk India is it's a bunch of products that is found everywhere in India at all supermarkets. They aim to make a vegan lifestyle more affordable and more accessible. I'm a vegetarian myself, but I do love indulging in a few vegan products here and there. And they make vegan milk, vegan curd, and vegan mayo so far. And I hope to see more products to come, right?
Yep, thanks for that lovely introduction. We are not in every supermarket yet, although we'd very much like
Oh,
to be.
okay.
You directly ship to our consumer all over the country, every town, city, village.
Oh, okay, interesting. And there's a website for the link of Good Milk down in the description box. Okay, so let's begin, shall we? With our questions. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a bit about the roots of Good Milk. How did this all begin? How did you get the idea? Why did it all begin? How did it begin?
Sure. So it started with my parents. I was born vegetarian, but didn't really have any awareness of veganism. My parents turned vegan about 11 years ago. In fact, I think March is going to be their 11th year of being vegan. And they did it for ethical reasons. They saw that where we live, we see a lot of cows walking up and down the street, and all of them are female, and nearly all of them are pregnant all the time. And that led my dad to ask some questions on really what goes on in the dairy industry. And the realization was that in order for mammals to lactate, they have to be either pregnant or having given birth. And in order for dairy as an industry to sustain, you need cows to go through a repeated cycle of pregnancy, and that is the only way the economics of the dairy industry work. And once we learned that, and what happens to cows after they stop lactating, what happens to male cows who don't lactate at all, who are sent to slaughter at a very early age, we realized that there's not a lot of difference between the cruelty that goes on in the meat industry to the cruelties that go on in the dairy industry. And we decided to boycott the dairy industry, so to speak. We didn't want to, when you pay money for something, you're in effect sanctioning it. You're voting for its presence in the future. And we wanted to not be a part of that anymore. Of course, I have been an ambitious kid from my childhood, and I wanted to do something more than just boycott. So I started an animal rights nonprofit, and we just did awareness campaigns all around the country with about 650 people just my age. All of them were passionate about the cause, and they took to the
Sure.
streets, talking to people, leafleting, talking about what goes on in a slaughterhouse, what goes on in the dairy industry, etc. And at some point, someone came to me and said, "Hey, Abhay, it's all cool to talk about being vegan, but it's not so easy because I can't access vegan products, and they're very expensive." I looked around, and it was true. And then I decided, having been on the demand generation side, or so to speak, as an activist, you're sort of generating demand for veganism, but I wanted to switch to sort of doing something on the supply side, which is create affordable and accessible products that work like dairy, and flood the market with it and see what happens. Hopefully, you remove the friction that is present when you're transitioning from consuming animal products to eating more plant-based. So that was the roots of Good Milk. We had to get started somewhere, so we got started at home. My mom and I co-founded the company, and we of course had Radhika, our co-founder, join us a little later. But she started making these products in the kitchen. I started delivering them on my bike before and after college, and that's how we got started.
Before and after college. Damn. So you were very, very young when this all started. How old were you when Good Milk actually came about? I read an article. Am I right in saying you were 18
Yeah, I was
also?
I was 18, probably turning 19, and it was just an
Sure.
idea at that point, right? So I'm 24 now, and
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I did it. I think we did the logistics and manufacturing from home for the better part of maybe 2 years, and in the mid of 2018 did we sort of graduate to a commercial facility.
Sure. And just being very, very young. I can imagine it's a lot of pressure, the studies, managing your studies as well. I think I saw on your LinkedIn page you were studying engineering. Am I right?
Oh yeah, I did drop out. You're very right in when you said that it is difficult to manage both. I did know at some point that this direction and the direction my academia was taking is going to collide at some point, and it did in a spectacular fashion. And I realized that I had to choose between one and the other. And that's not the case all the time. And there's certainly uh, ways you can
Mm,
run a startup or run your side project, whatever it may be, while studying and continue to excel in studies. And by no means would I encourage anybody to drop out. But my own realization was that the direction I was heading in life was not engineering at all. And this was also around the time where Goodwill started seeing some traction. We raised, $400,000, and I realized that I had responsibilities to investors, to my employees, to do a really good job with Good Milk and not essentially half-ass my way through it. So at some point, I had to choose, and it was quite fortunate that my parents were very encouraging of just letting go
mm.
of it and then running the company full time. In fact, they encouraged me to do it, and I think I'm very glad that their support was there because in the traditional Indian household would not encourage kids to take as many risks with their career,
Oh,
and
definitely.
yeah, they would
You know
want
how
you
it is
to.
in the Indian families. It's education first. It's you're studying first.
Absolutely, and there's merit to that. I think our parents probably grew up in a time where stability was important, and they definitely achieved that going through the traditional academic route and setting a career and having a stable income for their kids and families, and building a house. That was their aspirations. I think
Hmm.
kids who are born to them have the safety net of having all this, and therefore are afforded the opportunity to take risks with their career. And yes, risks
Definitely.
are by risky, but the rewards are higher too. You have the chance for outsized outcomes in your life. You can either create a lot of impact, get a lot of fame, get a lot of recognition, whatever it may be that you might want to seek. And I'm not saying people should do it for reasons any other than they're compelled to solve a specific problem. But there's no hypocrisy in admitting that large outcomes means large selfish returns for you too. And I think it is helpful for both kids and their parents to be cognizant of the rewards that lay in the future for taking balanced risks.
Definitely, definitely sure. I mean, yeah, dropping out. But a lot of those big entrepreneurs, at the top, if you actually did a bit of research as well, they also dropped out as well. Some people don't even think a degree is important in starting a business. If you have a passion for something, go for it, right?
Absolutely. And I would say that a lot of the big entrepreneurs that you see that have dropped out, I would say a lot of it is survivorship bias. There are a lot of people that dropped out and had it blow up in their face, right? So, it's important to be cognizant of the risks that are present when you're dropping out. Really figure out if you have a safety net. I'm all for taking risks, but I'm not for taking risks that can make you go bust, right? By the time I dropped out, Good Milk had already raised money. I'd also gone through a fellowship called University Innovation Fellows, and this was from the Stanford University's design school. And
Oh,
to some
wow.
extent, I felt that I had a safety net for myself should things blow up with Good Milk. And only when I was reasonably certain that I would be okay and not out on the streets if something went wrong, was I okay with taking that risk. So by all means, think about your own situation. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Risk taking with your careers is certainly not for everybody, nor should it be. And yeah, if it makes sense to you and everything works out, by all means, go for it.
Oh, wow. And so talk to me a little bit about this engineering degree. So, what inspired you initially to start engineering? Engineering and running a business are completely two different measures. And, a lot of students who are majoring in something different, so they want to start a business, and they like you did engineering or maybe even medicine or something, they don't have that access to business knowledge, to financial skills. How did you gain that knowledge, to start your business doing something completely different? I mean, you didn't even do a business degree. What advice would you give students today who want to start something but don't have that knowledge?
Great, that's a great question. In fact, I was a bit of a science nerd in school, And I always thought my natural path would be either engineering or pure sciences. And it took me a bit of going through that journey to realize that it wasn't for me. Academia, especially STEM, is hard, and there's
Yeah.
no two ways to it. And I realized that that wasn't an environment I thrived in. There's probably also that I was distracted with my own activism efforts. I think there's a bit of disillusionment about college and its rules, and sort of artificial boundaries that are set in academic environments that don't necessarily translate to real life. When I did my activism, I found some success with it. Definitely found a lot of recognition, raised some money for my nonprofit as well, and starting to see these real life sort of things go my way sort of disillusioned me against academia, and it was sort of a falling out of love, so to speak. And then when that happened, I naturally stopped putting any effort into it. I would say, I don't come from a business family. I don't definitely have a business background. I think the best way to just do this is just go out there and do it, make a few mistakes. You're going to learn eventually. Uh, and there's no, I personally don't believe that business skills can be taught. Maybe some of them, financial skills perhaps. But a lot of this is just going out there, talking to customers, failing a bunch, run small experiments every day that fail. Some of them are going to succeed, double down on them. That's sort of how I learned what business means. And by no means am I saying that I know all there is to know, nor am I saying that what I know is even right. I think it works for me today. And I think there's always a continuous updation of what you know, because the problems you want to solve today are not the same problems you're going to want to solve tomorrow. And scales matter. The quantum of money you're dealing with matters. And all things considered, I think the best way to just learn is go out there, fall a bunch, and figure out on your own. And that knowledge is going to be very intimate to you. In fact, one thing I've heard is that a lot of, and probably that's true for my experience too, is that a lot of the advice that you get isn't universal. You have to make it specific to yourself because you're the best in the world at being yourself. And as such, nobody that is not you has the same perspectives and life experiences that you have. So, you can have your own unique journey and learn your own unique lessons. And that's going to lead you to very powerful outcomes. And
Mm.
that's been my experience.
Yeah, I like that advice. I really do. And I also believe, we live in this world where, we live in a very different world. We have so much more access to resources than, for example, our parents ever did. I mean, I'm a finance student and I'm learning how to code online. I'm learning how
Mhm.
to build a website online. So, yeah, I think we live in an incredible world like that. I'm pretty sure you can learn um, those business skills online. How to do a business plan and stuff. It's such an amazing world we live in, I think.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think I heard this in a podcast. Specialization is for insects. And as such,
Hmm.
if something excites you, go down that rabbit hole, explore what is there in it. There's no such thing that precludes anybody from being very good at financial stuff and also being good at code. And I think some of the best executives in the world are generalists. They know a lot about a lot of things, but they don't know something about everything. Or perhaps I think the word I've sort of gravitated to is it's called a specialized generalist. It's someone who knows a lot about a lot of things, but knows a lot more about one specific thing. And I think it's in your earlier days because you're exploring. Best to put your finger in as many pies as possible. Figure out what you like and what you don't like.
Definitely, for sure. And so talk to me a little bit about some of the, challenges you faced as a young entrepreneur. Being part of the youth, we suffer a lot from low self-esteem. And, you know, being so young and going out there and starting your business, there's a lot of hurt that comes your way. You may not get that loan. You may not get that finance. You may not make that investor happy. You may not have any cheerleaders, the idea of cheerleaders, any support along your way. Um, yeah, and that really pulls us down. That really makes us think, what am I doing with my life? Is this business idea even worth transforming into reality? So there are a lot of challenges especially young entrepreneurs faced. If you feel comfortable talking about it, what are some of the challenges you faced? And, what advice can you give to people when they are facing a challenge? I mean, how did you overcome those challenges you faced?
For one, that's a great question, and I definitely probably have made more mistakes than the make right decisions. I think that's definitely part of experimenting, right? And for one, I did have a really strong safety net. You're right about there not being many cheerleaders in the beginning, but my cheerleaders were my parents, and I know a lot of people may not have access to that. But for those who do, I would say lean on them. I think in my experience, my parents were one of the few people who wished the best for me under all circumstances, even if it meant that it was to their disadvantage. And I don't think there's many people I can say the same about. So I definitely had a strong support system. My parents were very strict about my academia when I was younger. When I did not score 90+% in school, I had problems at home. But when I failed my engineering classes, they did not resort to being mean. They didn't resort to, sort of putting down my self-esteem. They did let me know that they were disappointed, but they also let me know they believed in me. And I think that was very powerful for me because I expected them to be very nasty. And at the time where I expected them to be at their worst, they were very kind. They were compassionate. They made sure I was okay. And that's, I think, resulted in a lot of gratitude that will probably carry through for the rest of my life. Not probably, definitely. And I would say having a strong support system is definitely important. If you don't have that in your family, go seek it out in your friends. Go find a mentor because you need these people believing in you. And especially in early stage ventures, it's not so much about the business, it's about you. Ultimately, even when your earliest investors write checks, they're not writing the checks because they think your business model is compelling. It's a part of it, but they're writing checks based on who you are. Before you jump into any business per se, make sure that you're actually compelled by it. It's easy to sort of run a business just for the sake of generating money. That's not a bad thing. But my bet is that a lot of people who start business just for the sake of money end up abandoning it when things get tough, which they inevitably will. Some of the other challenges I faced were definitely a lack of resources. I didn't know anything about fundraising, raising money from angels, from venture capitalists, and it took going through that journey of the first fundraise to actually learn all the mistakes that you can make, all the wrong people you can be speaking to. There was certainly a few investors before our first investor who we spoke to that tried to take advantage of my naivety as well. So, and I'm very glad that those deals fell through because the ones that ended up on our cap table genuinely wanted to empower me and the vision, and they were very aligned with the long-term interests of what we're trying to build. So that was one challenge. The other challenge was any lack of business knowledge at all. It took a lot of even finding out what there is to do, setting up systems. My challenge, I think, was that I wasn't a systems level thinker. I thought that order scale through getting messages on WhatsApp. It even took a lot of pushing by one particular mentor of mine to launch a website. People think that if you're running a business, you have to be a very smart person. I think that probably translates to being wiser when you know how to scale this, etc. But I definitely think a lot of things that were obvious to me now in hindsight were not obvious to me back then. So those are some mistakes I made, and I think another big mistake was not believing in myself, and I still struggle with that. Right, there are certainly good days and bad days you have within the company, and on some days I feel like I'm the king of the universe, and the other days I feel like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna ruin my career. I'm gonna ruin my life.
That's
And
all
it
of
was
us. That's all of us, though. That's all of us. And how do you deal with that? So you just have this really really bad day, but because good milk is on your shoulders, there's this big responsibility on you. There are people depend on you, and you have bad days. How do you wake up the next day and make that a good day, knowing that you have to because people are dependent on you now, especially now because your brand has grown. How do you do that?
That's a good question. I don't know that I necessarily know the answer. I think it goes back to sort of having a strong support system. My parents are
Yeah.
great. My wife is very supportive, and she's always open to listening to me, helping me work through problems. And I think a lot of this, if you're very persistent, you're going to figure out your answer. So it's not necessarily someone telling you what to do. It's just being there for you when you're not when you don't have the answers and you're sort of struggling to make sense of it all. But also must give a lot of credit to my team, my co-founder Radhika, our management team, who not only are very smart, accomplished people in their own right, but are also very supportive, and it helps know that you're not alone. That said, entrepreneurship is a lonely job, and even though you have co-founders, everybody with you, you're still going to feel alone at times. I think you just have to work through it. I don't have a specific solution for it. I mean, if it is getting in the way of you functioning, definitely seek help. There are therapists now. There's a lot of free resources to seek counseling online. Like you said, there's a lot of access we have to opportunities that our parents didn't. So I would say make use of the free stuff to even feel better. And if you're persistent enough, the answers will come. I think it's only a matter of time and effort.
I see. And so talk to us. So you're young, right? Um, when you start a business, right? The first you spoke about having a support system. When you start the business, the roots of it, the beginning, the journey, you're just seen as this normal figure. Now, Good Milk has grown. Everyone knows it. I've seen on Facebook group chats in India, vegans in Mumbai group chats and all that. They're all talking about Good Milk. They're all, there's this excitement about it. And people, the term of snakes, people who are just there for your wins, but not there for when you are down, you know? Um, yeah, does that happen where friends who just didn't call you in the beginning of Good Milk because they thought this idea was stupid, investors weren't interested in you then, they thought because you were young, they weren't confident in you, but now all of a sudden, boom, boom, pow, Good Milk is all out there. And yeah, how do you deal with those people who are coming back to you now, you know?
I don't think there's anything to do but to not deal with them, right? If they're not going to be there for you during your losses, then they're probably not the best people to go along with when you're winning. I would say, I mean, there's definitely a few examples of that, but I would say in hindsight, I have a lot more people that I'm grateful for, and you're going to see that across your journey as well. You're going to have people who are going to take chances on you. You're going to have, there are some people whose my biggest accomplishments were their daily routines. I was like, damn, we generated this much in revenue. They do that in a minute with their own companies, right? And there's sort of always someone who's done more than you, who's always willing to give you the time. Even today, I think, even with the scale that we're at, and I'm not saying that's large, but I would say it's definitely probably one of the larger ones in India. Even now, there's mentors that I rely on, who are there for me just as much as they are now, and they were there when I had nothing going for the company as well. So there's a lot more to be grateful for than to look at people who are the stakes, so to speak. And that said, I definitely always acknowledge that wanting to prove people wrong is a good motivator. Anger and sort of the desire to go big and tell people, hey, you weren't there for me at this time. Not that you'll ever have that conversation probably, but it even is powerful if it plays out in your head, right? I would say that they're powerful motivators too. Proving people right is great. Proving people wrong feels good too. So I would say use it if you can. But if it really gets to you, you can always focus on the things that are going well for you right now. And I will say this, right? I mean, if you're watching this even right now and you have access to an internet connection, you're probably privileged enough to have a lot of things in life that maybe some people on the planet don't. So there's a platform of gratitude you already can stand on, and it's a good place to start when you're thinking about things or people that are doing wrong by you.
Definitely. And so, just branching off from what we've spoken about, what important life lessons have you encountered? What important life lessons throughout your Good Milk journey have you encountered that you can share with us all?
One of them is money is not evil. I think especially in the household I grew up in, and definitely a lot of my friends, there's a bunch of virtue signaling around money. People they tell you people who have money they probably did something wrong to get there. They probably screwed a bunch of people over. They're definitely unethical people. Be careful of them. And it has been my experience that money is a tool. And it's a resource that can help you grow. It's a resource that can help you generate impact. So, it is wrong to say that people who have created value for tons of people are evil, right? And that was my first lesson, I think, is that one is sort of understanding that money is not evil, but rather a resource you can use to put yourself out there in the world and generate the type of impact that you want to generate. The second lesson, I think, is I think family and your support system is really important. The third thing, I think, is especially as a young person, I was a very angry activist. I burned bridges with so many people just because they disagreed with me slightly on some political issue. You have this desire to be more right than everybody else, and
Yeah.
my lesson was that it's not it's not the be all end all of everything to be right. It may not even be useful to be right all the time. I think some of the best entrepreneurs are wrong quite often and very spectacularly. It's because they take risks, and it's because they're pragmatic. It's important to balance idealism with pragmatism. It's important to be accountable, punctual, professional. All these things we sort of want to rebel against when we're younger, sort of as a way to stick it to the man, right? But we also realize that there's powerful tools you can extract from there. And it is far more important to be pragmatic and goal oriented than to sort of be right in a certain argument, or want to be the be all end all of your universe. And I think that was one realization. I definitely moved away from viewing all of this through the lens of my ego, sort of looking at
Mm.
it beyond that. Starting.
Thanks for sharing this. Thanks for sharing that tip. I think that's very, very important because, if you look at our generation, we're very, arrogant. If you look at social media and you see some of the stuff that happen, nobody is a Gandhi. Okay, nobody is a Gandhi when it comes to
Right.
activism. So, yeah, I think that's a very, very important point you touched on there. But sometimes people go a bit overboard with activism, don't you
Right,
think?
absolutely. I did too. I think that was the point I was alluding to when I was saying I burnt a lot of bridges. I
Yeah,
was mean to people. I didn't have to be. There are people who just generally wanted to learn, and I wanted to put them down for Facebook likes and comments that are supporting what I said. And yeah, I mean, having made those mistakes, I think you're right in saying arrogance is something you should keep aside, especially if you want to do something for a cause. Right? You realize that you're a servant. You're not the. You're not. Um, it's called, I think, a savior complex, or a hero complex. I think it's good for us to abandon that, especially because young people get attention. People say, "Oh my God, you're so young, you're doing all this," and it's easy for that to get to your head, and it certainly did for me. So that's something I would caution my fellow peers against. Don't make the same mistakes
sure.
I did on that front.
Definitely, about the thing when it comes to your head, the fame and the fortune and all of it, and sometimes we lose it, with activism. I think what makes someone a strong activist, I mean, would you agree, is you know what you want out of this. But how,
Right.
how do you, but sometimes you forget that along the way. As you said, we get wrapped up in the fame and the fortune, and sometimes we fail to understand that not everyone has the same brain. Not everyone sees things the way we do.
Right. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question? I sort of, yeah, lost my train of thought.
Oh, sorry, I said you had a good point there in terms
Oh,
of what you were saying about losing the vision. What makes someone a strong activist is, you know what you have in mind. You know what you want to
right.
do, but as you said, getting lost in the fame and the fortune, and
Absolutely.
just, it really lowers down what you were trying to do in the beginning, I feel. But I mean, a lot of activists, I'm pretty sure, go through it. How do you get
Right.
back up on the road?
Yeah, and these are all things that tie you to your status, right? And when you get recognition, you see your status increasing. But really, status is very temporary, and it can change overnight. It can change when someone else does their job better than you do yours. Ultimately, though, I think it helps to have real metrics you're tracking, right? I don't know necessarily how to do this for animal rights at the moment, perhaps, but I would want to one day target, or track rather, how many animal lives have I spared? How many animal lives have I removed from the global food supply chain? How many sustainable jobs have I created? That's a metric that's easy to track. Um, how much of how many natural resources, water, energy, whatever it may be, have you saved in the pursuit of doing what you're doing? And these numbers are very humbling because even though you get a lot of press attention, those numbers are probably low when you're starting out. And it's a real reminder of staying true to your journey. And that goal is it's important to sort of split that goal into measurable outcomes and really go after those measurable outcomes. So you stay humble, stay true to your mission.
Definitely. So, tell me, when we're talking about recognition, it's quite funny that I bring this up, but I have to. This is an amazing award. You have been the recipient of Forbes 30 Under 30, not once, but twice. How does that feel? How does that feel?
I was definitely pretty happy about the first one, I think. But I had a conversation with a friend of mine who also got Forbes under 30, and what she told me stuck with me. She said, "Real success is still those numbers, And at the time we got those awards, and even now, certainly grown, but it's not to the scale I'd like it to be. How many animal lives have we spared? Going back to those questions, I realized that sort of true success to me is getting those things. The awards and recognitions are going to probably come your way, even if they don't. I think a lot of great businesses, a lot of great impact has been generated in the sort of unsexy sort of spaces where you don't have a lot of recognition right now. And you're probably never going to get it. But that said, you're still going to generate a lot of revenue, perhaps a lot of impact. You're going to impact a lot of people, and I think that's a far more satisfying and solid platform to stand on than a few awards. Because let's say your business fails tomorrow, the first question that's going to come to your mind is, "Oh my God, I won all these awards. Wasn't it guaranteed that I would succeed?" And the answer is very obviously no. The things that are going to guarantee your success are staying true to solving your problem authentically, talking to your customers, building revenue, capturing more of your market. These things are not very attractive things to speak about, but really that's where the real substance is. So while I got the second one, we definitely were happy as a family, and definitely took
Yes. And
half a day.
sorry, the youngest Indian to ever be featured. The youngest Indian to ever be featured.
I don't think that's true. I
Really,
think it
I
was.
saw that online. Was that not?
Oh
Was
yeah, I
that
don't
not
think it was
true?
true. I think there are definitely seen people there that were far younger than I was, like maybe 4 or 5 years younger, who had built
Oh,
businesses like three or four times the size of my business at that time. So going there was also a very humbling experience because you're in a room full of people who have achieved a lot, and the first thing you think is, "Do I even belong here?" Right? And then the second thing you think is, okay, then you start seeing people that you relate to on a personal level, and sort of seeing that really everybody who's authentically solving a problem belongs there, and you realize that all of this is also temporary. So sort of stop seeking awards like that. Nor am I very excited about them when they happen. I'm more excited about, hey, have we hit our numbers yet? That's what I'm obsessed about.
so obviously you think, you want people to stop obsessing about the award. So you would say it will happen very naturally. You weren't forcing anything. You weren't working to win such an award.
I definitely applied the first time, and I
Oh,
think
okay.
to some extent there is that version of playing the game. Yes, definitely awards like these don't probably realistically meaningfully increase your chances of success. But if it helps more people know about your cause, it helps more people understand what you're accomplishing, or understand the movement that you're trying to fight for. I think that's a good thing. I wouldn't say no to awards coming anybody's way, but definitely don't get caught up in the pursuit of seeking this or having this be even top 4 5 metrics that you're tracking with how far along your goal you've gone, or how far along your journey have gone with respect to achieving your goals. So yeah, I mean, definitely, if the opportunity is free, it's right there, and if you can get it, definitely apply for it. But don't
So
be
you had to
disillusioned.
apply for Forbes.
I think it's a combination of. I think I applied for it the first time. I got in automatically the second time. Definitely a bunch of awards I've gotten. I've never even applied for. So I think it's. Uh, yeah, I mean, just see if the opportunity is available. Definitely apply for it, especially when you're earlier on in your journey. I think you have to apply for a lot of things, and then when you've sort of achieved some traction, etc., these things start coming your way. That's true for my activism experience too. My first, I think, 15 speeches in schools and colleges, I had to go to their management and beg them to let me speak. And now, when I go and speak in a school or college, they pay me and they call me to go and speak there, right? So it's people need to because people are very have a herd mentality. They like to see someone credible backing you before they back you, so that their perceived emotional risk in that equation is lesser. So definitely go for it. I think I've come to a point where I don't want to go after it anymore. But I think having this recognition even helped give me a platform in places that wouldn't have entertained me otherwise. It's
Definitely.
credibility. It's That said, I don't know how relevant it is going to be in the future, especially when the world is moving to sort of a more decentralized grassroots sort of approach. I don't necessarily know how much the backing of a centralized institution and sort of an institution that has its own biases, has its own prejudices, will really play out, because I've applied to a bunch of things that I never got in, and I hold a grudge, or not a serious one, but I
Okay.
think, hey, I know my work today, and you guys didn't let me in, and I'm gonna make a mental note of that one day, so maybe blog about it or write about it. So you realize that a lot of this is just your own ego, and no hypocrisy in admitting that your ego is stimulated in certain ways when you get something or don't, but don't go overboard with it. I think that would be my advice.
Definitely. And there's so much value in actually applying to these type of prestigious awards. Do you definitely, I mean, you definitely touched on something. So you were called to schools to give talks, and you were featured in something like Forbes magazine. That's a very popular magazine. And that really definitely grew the brand Good Milk. I mean, I'm from South Africa. That's how I heard about Good Milk. um, and stuff. So there's value in actually growing the activism, growing your brand with applying to these prestigious awards. What tips can you share to students about, in terms of winning these, if they want to grow and share their business with the world?
Right. I think, just be authentic and solve your problem. Honestly, the right opportunities are going to come along your way. If you build your business, or, whatever it is, project, it may be, to be geared towards winning certain awards, that's sort of a futile attempt, right? These opportunities are going to come along your way when it is right. And I would say the best thing to do is just focus on yourself, focus on the problem you're solving, and just put your heart and soul into it, and be very authentic. And when the right time comes, when you apply for it, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. I wouldn't say not getting it is in any way indicative of your business. It definitely tells a lot about the judges, perhaps, who didn't select you, a lot more than it says about yourself. So focus on solving the problem. I don't have any tips per se to get into something. It is just solve your problems, and if you've done authentic enough work, the world is waiting to recognize you. So don't go behind it. I would say that's how I'd sum it up.
That's fantastic advice you offered there. So just going to our comments, one of our viewers, oh, I hope I pronounced her name right, Madhulika Tipple, okay? She asked, how did you manage finances at the start of your venture?
Oh, I didn't. I lost a bunch of money. So yeah, luckily my parents and my family lent us some money to start off with. Definitely made a ton of mistakes, lost a lot of money. But that's why when you raise capital, you must leave a little room for experimentation, a lot of room for failure. And of course, when your company grows and your business model grows, you're going to see that numbers become more and more important. But in the early stages, I didn't really care about the finances. I cared about solving a problem. I cared about making plant-based food affordable and accessible. And today, I still care about these things, but it's sort of nuanced because there's more systems that are dealing with this. Financial systems, there's people, there's goods, there's services, there's all of these things that interplay with each other that you have to be very cognizant of. But when you're earliest, when you're at the start of your venture, it's just you and what you want to do. So go ahead and make mistakes. Honestly, I didn't manage finances at all at the start of the venture.
And so, being a student entrepreneur, I'm a finance major, and I am, interested in entrepreneurship a lot. So, um, what has come across to me as a student, wanting to enter into the world of entrepreneurship is which way of financing is a good way. So what would you recommend to students actually? Would you say go to the bank, take a loan, but then there's that risk where banks are not 100% confident in young people and they may not see your business plan the way you do? Or would you say go to investors? What sort of financing do you think works
Right.
best for especially young entrepreneurs?
I think first of all, there's a lot of ways to run a startup for free. But if you need some money, I think typically the way it goes, your friends and family are your earliest backers. And it certainly was true in my case as well. I had friends and family who loaned me money, and after a while, when we raised capital from investors, I paid them back. But I don't personally, as a family too, I've sort of been trained to sort of look at banks with a little bit of suspicion and be careful when it with them. So I've never really approached the bank at all. I went to my parents first, then I went to my cousins, I went to my uncles and aunts, and they helped out a little. And if you're in most cases, you can really build your minimum viable product without having to spend a lot of money, and get feedback from customers who would pay for that minimum viable product. And if you get your first paying customer, it's not a long way away before you get your 100th and your 1,000th and your 10,000th paying customer. And suddenly you'll have figured out the financial stuff along the way. So I would say, if you can do something for free, definitely try your best to make it as crappy as possible. It is sort of maybe counterintuitive to not raise funds at your earliest stage. I would say unless you're a proven entrepreneur with, track record, if you are great, there'll be a bunch of people willing to put money on you, even if you don't have a product or a minimum viable product yet. Certainly a lot of examples that way. But I didn't have a track record. I didn't have anything to say that I would build a successful venture. So I just went out, solved, built a product in the kitchen. It was free, or maybe it cost me 50 rupees to get to the first prototype, and put it out there for customers to buy. So don't try to worry about efficiency. Don't try to worry about building your systems. Get to that product first, and then find yourself a mentor who's going to help you along the way. You're going to figure these answers out.
And where can we find mentors? For me, I would like to share with viewers is I think LinkedIn is a great way um, to get mentors. I mean, I read about your story on Forbes, and then I connected with you on LinkedIn to just catch up on your journey because I thought it was also impressive. So, what other ways would you recommend? I mean, I recommend to viewers LinkedIn as a way to get mentors.
Right. That's LinkedIn's great. There's also, you probably know someone within your own networks who's run a successful business. Definitely take their advice, but don't assume this means that you're not running your venture. You're ultimately responsible for your successes and your failures. And take their feedback and advice as one data point. There's a lot of good advice out there, but there's also an equally amount of bad advice. And I've heard that the total amount of advice in the world cancels to zero because some of it's so good and some of it's so bad. And use their points of view as one data point. Ultimately, you're the person that's going to take these decisions, and you know best what problem you're trying to solve. Another way to find mentors is, go to startup pitch events. Definitely put yourself out there, make a few mistakes. You'll find a lot of people who want to give back. I think a very powerful thing about the startup community is that a lot of these successful entrepreneurs have had people who took a chance on them. They're only paying it forward. So your best mentors, and you're definitely my best mentors, have never had any expectations of me at all. They said they're going to support me whether this business fails. They have no financial expectations. They have no expectations at all. All they want to do is give their time and advice to me. And you'll find a lot of people like that, a lot of really good people. So put yourself out there, but definitely also follow up with them, right? Don't take their advice and time for granted. Follow up, be punctual, respect their time. And I would say you'll find yourself a board of advisors even pretty early on if you're very sincere and sincere.
Definitely. I think the thing with having mentors, something that's a very key thing to note as well. Would you agree? So with mentors, they give good advice, bad advice, but they may not see bad advice as bad advice. We all have different perceptions. And I definitely think, yes, be punctual with your mentor, be respectful, and don't, shit on them when things go wrong.
Right.
I think that's that's very important, especially because we're the generation full of arrogant people. I definitely think
Right.
only you will know what is good advice, and you shouldn't just follow a mentor. The thing with running a business is that you make the decisions. The mentor doesn't. The mentor is there for guidance. I think that's very important for a lot of student entrepreneurs to understand.
Absolutely.
A
And
lot of responsibility with a business.
right. Yeah. It's important to not deflect blame. I think at some point, our generation probably also has a problem with taking accountability of their actions, of their decisions.
100%.
Yeah. And I know I did at some point as well. So ultimately, even even in the interest of your long-term success, it helps to start taking accountability for your failures. I like to believe that it's a good way to give credit to other people and take blame. Of course, as and when is reasonable, right? But it's important to remember that, yeah, you're right. Just it's your decision at the end of it, and if it works, great. If it fails, it's a learning opportunity. But don't use it as an opportunity to blame someone else for your failures.
Definitely. Okay, so I see there's another question here. So, any resources to connect with the startup community?
Well, there's Y Combinator startup school is free. That's one way to do it. There's a lot of free pitching events in your local city. Definitely check them out. And of course, maybe after COVID, that doesn't matter anymore. But definitely look for resources within the country, so that they have local know-how. They have connections with local investors. And yeah, otherwise, there's also a ton of free resources online. I think there's a bunch of blogs. I think forentrepreneurs.com was a very good blog for me when I was starting out to understand how to really build a company as a structure. What is the typical journey someone takes? A lot of free advice. I think there's a bunch of videos on blitz scaling on YouTube. That's great. And of course, this is all stuff that helped me. It doesn't have to help you. Please take what I say with a pinch of salt. It's just a data point. There's a bunch of podcasts. I'll probably have to get back to you all, maybe via an email, on some of the podcasts that have helped me. But it's out there, and maybe even these resources that I said are a great place to start.
Definitely. Viewers, subscribe to us, Scholarship Track. On our newsletter and stuff, and our blog, we feature all these type of things. We want to create awareness about opportunities for students out there. So, Abhay, if you could definitely email me with those links about those live podcasts, and I'll definitely, create that awareness to our viewers. I'll write about it in our newsletter or put in our blog for you guys to know. So stay connected with us, Abhay. We'll share those links, and you guys will have access to those podcasts. We're here to help you. And
That
we have
sounds
another
good.
question. Yes, thank you. We have another question here. How to check whether your product would survive in the long term?
It's a good question. I don't think there's a realistic answer. You will, in your earlier stages, you want to focus on something called product market fit, and the best way to do that is to rapidly iterate on your product based on consumers' feedback. So if you have what you think is a shitty product, it's okay. Give it to a bunch of people. Ask for their genuine feedback on what they would improve, and they will eventually tell you what they want. Consumers are happy to tell you what they want. In fact, our angriest customers are always the ones that have very specific feedback. They don't just say you suck. They say, you guys ruined your experience, ruined my experience by delivering this product at this time. And I'm like, okay, that's something to note. Don't deliver at this time, right? So your consumers always have great points of feedback for you. Ultimately, if you couple that with your own vision for the product, you will get to a point where there's a certain market that wants your product. And if it's a compelling enough idea, it survives. And there are times where it doesn't, right? It's very hard to predict what's going to happen. In fact, if 5 years ago, if someone had asked you, what do you see yourself going through in 2020 or 2021, I don't think anybody would have thought a pandemic is the answer. And yet here we are, right? So much of the world is just sheer luck and a lot of chance, and there are so many random events where it's impossible to predict anything really about the future. So I would say, put your best foot forward. And if you're the type of person that wants to solve problems, and even if your first, second, or third, or fourth attempt fails, ultimately you're going to get to a point where you find success. So it is about being the type of person that attracts consumers, attracts value creation, and that involves a lot of building yourself up and then going through experiments. One of them is inevitably going to tick. Before Good Milk, I ran an animal rights band that failed miserably. I tried to launch, a t-shirt project, and that failed. I tried a lot of things that really hit the floor. And I was lucky enough to have parents who didn't say, look, you failed so many times, you're going to fail another time as well. Sort of brush off the dust. Hopefully you haven't spent a lot of time, money, and resources trying to get to the point where if that's something you want to commit a sizable amount of your career to. And if you get to that point, go all in, and you'll find your answer.
Definitely. So, talking a bit about what you said. So, I guess it's all about loving criticism. I love criticism. I think it's a great way. I mean, as annoying as sometimes it can be, it's a great way to really expand your knowledge and sort of know what to do with your product to further develop it to your customers' liking. But obviously, everybody's different. Everyone has different perceptions. And one of the things I feel is a challenge with entrepreneurship and having your own business is which customer complaint do you listen to? You can't, possibly listen to every single customer's complaint and comply with that. It's very expensive.
Right. We the consumer, and it is their right, demands the moon. We have, with our own specific example, the ideal consumer product is a good milk that works like cow's milk, is more nutritious, has a clean label, is in a sustainable package, is shelf stable. Is a 10x better product than dairy. And ultimately, you have to pick what specific features of that problem you like to work on today. This isn't to say that this all of this cannot be accomplished, but it definitely cannot be accomplished immediately, perhaps. So it's important to lay out your vision of it, right? And that's where mistakes happen. Sometimes you listen to consumers and do some things, but you realize that it's only what that specific consumer wanted. But thankfully, in your earlier days, you have that flexibility. You can listen to a lot of data points, select some of them, experiment it out, put it out there, see if it has any acceptance. It all comes down to sort of putting yourself out there, putting a product out there, getting real feedback iteratively. One round of feedback is not enough. You need to go through a round of feedback every day, perhaps every product cycle. Keep putting it out there, and ultimately, I think you'll broadly realize. And it's of course assuming that you don't have your own insights already, right? Like if you're really putting something out there and then building the product based on your consumers' needs and asks, I think you may miss out on some aspect of it where your vision is lost. So at some level, you have to say, this is what I want in this product, and be a little stubborn about it. There's no, the mistake is to assume that there's a general formula to do this. There really isn't. Try a combination of these things. And yeah, as sort of hippie as it sounds, I think the answer will come to you, and nobody can tell you what the answer is.
Definitely, that's a good answer. So as we conclude this live Q&A, I have one last question to ask you. So how do you plan to grow your business? What can you share with us about what we can expect from Good Milk?
Sure. I mean, I think FMCG companies, much like ours, the three pillars of success in this space is having the right products, having the right brand, and having an awesome distribution channel. And our efforts are, I think we have good products and we have, say, a sizable distribution, and we definitely have some way to go on the brand. Our sort of playbook is to see how many other products can we launch and expand our distribution to be as wide as possible. It's sort of that having a wide distribution channel means you can launch more products, and launching more products means that your distribution channel becomes wider. It's sort of this positive virtuous circle. As some people call it, a flywheel. It's a fancy word. It's just a virtuous circle where your products grow your distribution and your distribution grows your products. And hopefully we come to a point where we're very large and we can take some big risks on certain R&D projects, biotech stuff, stuff that brings us as close to animal products as possible, but completely from like an ethical, sustainable source. And create a business that empowers a lot of people, be a sizable business, capture more of the dairy market. Hopefully at one point remove all animals from the supply chain and power a version of the planet where everybody gets their nutrients, everybody gets what they want to eat, except it doesn't come from a place that's unsustainable or unethical.
Wow. Well, that's something quite to achieve, but you guys have achieved a lot, so I'm pretty sure you can definitely make that happen, hey?
Very kind of you to say that, Savani. I think it remains to be found. We're confident of the direction, but then again, the market will tell us what the market will tell us.
Definitely, because veganism is a huge thing in India. I was shocked. I think when I went to India, I know vegetarianism was a big thing there, but your veganism community is really growing. I mean, on Facebook, you get vegans in Mumbai, vegans in all areas, and yeah, I think definitely Good Milk. I think you definitely have some positive things coming for you guys in the future because I've seen those Facebook group chats. There is that need for affordable vegan products. I mean, you shouldn't a lot of people want to become vegan for the ethical reasons behind that. I mean, why you guys became vegan, but it's expensive. I don't know if you know the Beyond brand, Beyond Meat brand.
Absolutely, they're
Um,
pioneering. yeah, they pioneered the whole space in plant-based meat.
But flippin' expensive, man. Yeah, so I really love what you guys are doing, and I know that there are great things coming up out for Good Milk. And I just want our viewers to know that yeah, you've shared a lot of value. And I think when it comes to running your business, to make it a success, it's really about being you and making your voice heard in your business 24/7 instead of thinking about the money and the Gucci bag that comes at the
Absolutely.
end. Yes. Thank you so much, Abhay, for your time. And thank you so much, viewers, for joining us. I hope you all have a lovely afternoon, or if you're in the US, a lovely day. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Bye.